Good evening. Today is Monday, January 5th, 2015. We're gathered for the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I would ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Spencer, could you please take the roll?
Gutenkopf.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader. Here. Palumski.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Toledo.
Here.
York. Absent. Levin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Honquist.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. Let's jump right in. We have got scheduled for agenda item number 2. We've got George Galrup and Scott Kish. Did I pronounce that right, Scott?
Yes, thank you.
Both here from ComEd to give us an update not only on some of the improvements that were made in the last year, but some of the forward-looking improvements that we can expect in 2015. And both have graciously agreed to stay after their presentation and entertain questions from the dais. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. George Galrup.
Okay, good evening. Mayor Morley, staff, city council members, thanks for letting us be here tonight. Members of the Elmhurst community. We're happy to be here, happy to present, especially when there's good news coming. And I will tell you, we did additional work this year, thanks to your mayor strong-arming me. So, and we'll do additional work next year, depending on how far the Green Bay Packers go into playoffs. Is that right, Mike? So we have Scott Kish here. He's a reliability engineer. He'll go through the PowerPoint presentation with you. At any point, if you have questions, if you can write them down, just hold them to the end, and we can circle back to the PowerPoint and answer them at that time, if that's all right with the council. Okay, Scott?
Thank you, George, and I'd also like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to what we have to say tonight. I think we have a good story, and it's a pleasure to share it with you. So this, again, you've seen this before. This is just a high-level map of the ComEd facilities that serve the city of Elmhurst. We have 47 different distribution circuits that supply power to the customers here in Elmhurst, and we're going to talk a little bit about them in these next few slides. So when we look at the reliability metrics, this table shows the average number of interruptions customers in Elmhurst experience per year looking back at the last 5 years. This is one of our key reliability metrics, and the lower the number represents better performance. So ComEd normally publishes the final numbers in April, so what you're seeing is a preliminary number, and might change a little bit between now and when they are finally published. But a number of 0.68 in 2014 means that on average, Elmhurst customers experienced less than 1 interruption last year. This is the best performance on record for the 2nd year in a row. Elmhurst is favorable to the overall ComEd system average and also favorable to the ComEd's northern region. Next few slides will update everyone on the 2014 plan, and we have some preliminary information has been mentioned about the 2015 plan. Again, we published that in the April timeframe. So again, looking back at 2014, each program we have is designed to improve performance in a slightly different way. For example, the 1% circuit program entails a detailed review of the interruptions on the circuit with targeted corrective actions to repair, replace components where needed. There was 1 circuit in the program last year here in Elmhurst. Distribution automation is the Smart Switch program that expands the self-healing capabilities of the system. Reducing the number of customers interrupted when there are disturbances like a car hits a pole. With automation, without automation, something like that might impact 1,500 customers or more. With automation, the impact can be reduced by half or even more. And this is a program that was part of the grid modernization bill that was approved in 2011. The storm hardening and localized improvements are designed to improve performance where there have been storm-related outages. Hendrix cable is where we install the tree-resistant wire overhead. We've brought that in a few times before. It's an example of one of the things we do, and we'll get into those shortly. The manhole assessments are being done as part of the grid modernization bill, where we are looking at all of our underground manholes with visual and infrared cameras, trying to spot any potential issues and getting those fixed. The wood pole inspection and treatment, again, part of grid modernization, where we do a diagnostic inspection on all of our wood poles, applying any type of wood preservative that might be needed that are showing signs of decay, and replacing poles as needed. And then the tree trimming program, ComEd trims around distribution circuits on a 4-year cycle. We have certified arborists that review vegetation near the overhead lines. They identify growth expected over the next 4 years and take appropriate action to trim back any growth that might cause harm to the system and keep the trees healthy. In some cases, they'll remove trees that pose higher risk to the system. So again, this gets into some of the specifics. So Circuit Whiskey 668 X-ray was worked last year under the 1% program. This serves an area around Madison. We replaced a number of fuses for better coordination, and the benefit for the customers is a more resilient overhead system. That line 12069, that connects the station at First and Larch with our station off of Villette, as well as some of the other stations outside the city of Elmhurst here. The benefit, again, is further segmenting that line so that any disturbances, again, like a car hits a pole, it would restore as many customers as possible through automatic switching. Whiskey 5204, which serves an area right around 200 to 600 West Grand. ComEd installed an additional device that ties to a neighboring circuit, Whiskey 5205, expanding the self-healing capabilities in that area, automatic restoring as many customers as possible when there are disturbances. And that's a picture of one of those automated switches. The top picture is that Hendrix cable I was describing. We were continuing on with that build out in 2014, and we'll talk about 2015 in a minute here. We did some additional improvements on Whiskey 5204, again, serving that area we just mentioned, making the overhead more resilient by replacing arms, retensioning overhead wire, installing tap fuses, and installing about 950 feet of that Hendrix spacer cable we just talked about, plus some tree trimming. Whiskey 5208, we installed a new underground tie along Babcock by Lake Street, benefiting there, adding some operational flexibility to that area. And Whiskey 682, we installed some of those trip saver devices. That's in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Those are near Church and Fisher Farm Road. Again, benefits the protection from tree contact, where customers may only see a momentary outage instead of seeing sustained outages. This one particular slide gets into some work that was done more of an emergent basis based on some issues we had the weekend of July 19th. Normally, customers in an underground area are served with two different directions. There's what we call primary and an alternate, which allows for relatively quick restoration by our field operators when there's a problem with one of those pieces of underground cable, such as someone digs into it or a weak spot develops in the insulation that ultimately leads to a fault. And in that case, our field operators can switch customers relatively quickly to get them all restored. On July 19th, we lost both the main and the alternate feeds into this subdivision. We had crews working around the clock to get customers restored, but some were out for an extended period of time. We were able to get the targeted sections replaced starting that Monday, the 21st. George and I went out to the neighborhood and we knocked on doors and we did some customer outreach to the customers that had been affected. I believe there were about 40 homes that we visited, 43 homes. Thank you, George. We knocked door to door to let customers in that area know what was going on, what corrective actions ComEd had in place, and was generally well received. I know it was an awkward situation for those customers. They were out for an extended period of time, but we made apologies on behalf of the company, and I think they appreciated it. And then ComEd actually has more cable replacement in this area planned this year. So speaking of this year, we do have some work continuing. And again, we published the final work plan in around April timeframe. So this kind of gets into some of the things we have identified to this point. 11,000 feet of additional underground cable replacement will be done this year, targeting sections that are need replacement. We're doing some additional spacer cable, which is that Hendrix spacer cable. We're doing some wood pole replacements, and we have some tree trimming that's planned on 15 circuits this year. So some of the specifics, near Fullerton and Church, we've got 3,000 feet of cable that's being replaced. Around Stewart and Madison, on 2 of those different circuits, we have about 8,000 feet of cable that's being replaced. And then we have, so far, 2 areas where we're going to be doing this overhead spacer cable. Both are scheduled for the first quarter of this year. Brush Hill and Prospect, and then Adela and North End. And you can see the footage is on the screen, roughly 970 feet in the first case and 270 in the second case. And then again, a lot of our reliability programs are based on end-of-year type performance. So certain things will be added to the plan when we have final 2014 performance scores on all of our circuits. So there will likely be additional work added, and when we know, we'll share it with you at that time. And that was really all I wanted to cover. Is there anything else, George?
I just want to emphasize on the community outreach on July 19th, that week of when Scott and I and another ComEd employee went out. It was a warm day. It was very warm. And the reception sometimes wasn't as pleasant as we thought it would be. I remember going to one home on the end of a cul-de-sac, a gentleman, elderly gentleman who used to be an engineer. I introduced myself, showed him my ID badge, and he said, "I don't want to talk ComEd." And he started to close his door, but I asked him for just a moment to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it, and the leadership that ComEd now has on replacement of cable and trying to get ahead of the problems. And he did listen, and he was happy to hear the message. And a week later, things went well. Everything was put in place, and I don't think they've had an outage in that area well, I shouldn't say anything because it'll happen tonight if I say it. So, but it's just the communication and the human side of ComEd that we want to expose on what we're doing, how hard we're working, and that we do listen to the aldermen, to the mayor, to the staff, and make improvements as we go.
All right, thank you, George.
Okay, while we have him here, any questions for ComEd? Alderman Mulliner.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for all the effort that you're making, and we appreciate it in the city of Elmhurst. We hope it just continues. It's been a huge improvement, especially down in our area, which is the 7th Ward. We've had a lot of problems historically, and it's been much improved, and we appreciate all the effort that you've put in. Just hope that it continues. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other questions for ComEd? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, a little bit laryngitis here. I also want to thank you guys for coming out. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it for probably about a good half year, so I was waiting at the edge of my seat for you guys to come and present. A few things that have been on my mind over that period of time, but I want to go to reliability first. Excuse me. Reliability, I know Alderman Mulliner just stated on how the south side of town has seen some improvements, and from the statistics that you've shown, it seems like it continues to get better overall from a city of Elmhurst perspective. From the north side, though, as you were ticking through the accomplishments for Elmhurst overall, the only improvement that I've seen from a north side perspective, there's one, I believe, in the 2nd Ward, and the one in the 3rd Ward, which is mine, is 270 feet of Hendrix cable, which is a half a block. So I'm concerned because we continue, not saying we're catching up to the south side with the reliability issues of years gone by, but the north side has continually seen a spike or an increase of reliability issues. I want to say twice, if not 3 times last year, myself and my neighbors were out, and not out for like an hour, out for many hours, and I want to say maybe even a day or 2 last year. My memory fails me as I get older. So what are the plans to start some additional improvements all throughout Elmhurst? And obviously my concern is the north side, because I hate to continue to see Elmhurst residents feeling a need to have, natural gas-powered generators on every home. Portable generators, which I think almost every Elmhurst resident has now at every home. What improvements could we expect this year and going forward? Because I'm happy with the improvements we've seen, but at least from a north side perspective, 270 feet of Hendrix cable doesn't give me a sigh of relief going into this year.
Yeah, and I think maybe I wasn't clear enough earlier, but again, we're in the process of developing the 2015 work plan, and we're sharing with you what we have identified to this point. We fully expect to add additional work to the plan. If you can help provide some specifics around what you've experienced, we can address what caused those outages and what corrective actions might be possible, again, on your circuit. Again, we do look at lots of different things when we consider the improvements for the area. We've done the manhole inspections, the wood pole inspections, expanding the additional distribution automation. So we do have quite a bit in the plan, in addition to a lot of tree trimming that's scheduled for this year. Elmhurst is generally an overhead area where trees can be a cause of outages if they're not cared for. And we have a substantial amount of tree trimming plan this year. So we do have quite a few things in the plan, but we can certainly follow up with you on additional specifics.
I just want to touch one point. And Alderman, we've had meetings before with different aldermen and with the mayor. When we have our annual report come out, the annual report generally comes out in April, so that gives us January, February, March to compile the rest of the 2015 work plan, so we can update you at that point also.
Okay, much appreciated. I mean, I would assume that when at least I've been contacted in regards to outages in my ward, I have communicated that to our city manager as well as to George yourself, as you well know. So I don't know any additional data that I have that I haven't already provided in the past. And I would think, even though it was pretty much at the, mid-year towards the end of the year, smart meters, and that was my next question. Okay. I would assume that smart meters would have a great implication of letting you know of where outages are occurring and where are the trouble spots throughout town. And I'll throw that question out now. Is every household or every building in the city of Elmhurst now armed with smart meters?
Well, it was only residential at this time. C&I, which is commercial industrial, will come next year. Okay. But the way the meters work, until the full network is mesh network hooked together, at that point, which would probably be about the end of 2015, that's when there's an outage, the smart meter has last gasp technology, and it'll send a message off to ComEd telling us that the meter is out of power. Does it mean you don't have to call ComEd anymore? Yes and no. We still appreciate the call so we can narrow it down, but that technology will be available probably about a year. So that'll help. Instead of searching blocks and blocks to see where the outage actually is, it will save us time and effort to get a pinpoint target and make those restorations.
When you say when the network is complete,
Yep.
Can you provide a little bit further detail?
Sure.
What the network is defined as?
Yeah, it's the communication towers that you'll see on top of the utility poles. That's where the signal goes off to. And once that mesh network is completed, then we have a route going back to to ComEd. That's where the signals will go back. So there's really two parts, the mesh network and then the overlay of the smart meters. It's built around.
Okay. I was just wondering if you meant within the city of Elmhurst being the network or to a certain access point outside of the city.
It's really an access point throughout the city.
Okay. Mayor?
Alderman Bram?
Thank you. One of the other questions that I've had, other than smart meters and outages, was in regards to ComEd right-of-ways. In the third ward, there's the major overhead distribution lines, transmission lines is what I was looking for, running east-west through the third ward. Over this past summer, we've seen issues where the grass height is significant, where significant being that residents can't see around the corner of traffic coming around the intersection, to the height that, any resident who would leave it at that degree would get ticketed. So I guess I would like to understand, what is ComEd's plan to improve on the maintenance record, at least this past year, of maintaining right-of-ways within the city of Elmhurst?
And not to make any excuses at all with the weather and the rain, we did get behind. Since then, we proactively worked together with the department head that we feed all issues and concerns from all the cities in the south region. And they have upgraded and added them to their vegetation management system. So next year, you'll see that improvement right off the bat.
Great. That's it, thank you.
Well, can I mention one thing? And I know we talked in the past. Occasionally, at night, we're out here doing some work. You'll hear the beeping of the trucks backing up, things like that. What happens if we're out in a certain section of town with an outage, and we're fixing that outage, and 2 homes away, we have a work ticket order that we can walk over and pull a meter or make a minor repair. Our crews do that to save time for the community and make sure things work better. We try to be as quiet as possible. We try not to shout names across. Alderman Bram and I have talked about this. I think we've had significant improvements. I know your ordinance don't allow for work at the evening, so we try to cherry pick a little bit to make sure that things get done in a quick way. So our apologies if we've disturbed somebody. I know we did in the past, and I think I called the lady up about that too. So we're trying to just do the best job we possibly can.
Anyone else who hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet, have a question for ComEd? Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I live in the area of Madison and Stewart and was one of the 43 homes that was affected by that project.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say the level of coordination and communication was better than I've ever seen on anything that's been done in our neighborhood. So thanks very much. I had a lot of
Well,
good
thank
comments
you.
from neighbors. Thanks.
We appreciate that, and we'll pass that on.
Alderman Bram.
Yeah, thank you, Georgia. And we have had that conversation in the past, and since you reminded me of that, I wanted to bring it up publicly. There were a few, maybe not a lot of residents, but a few that were woken up in the middle of the night, who have children, who have dogs, and were really concerned with what was going on, right? You're seeing strange men in the backyard, not always a pleasant experience. I'm a little bit concerned that, ComEd's plan is still to continue with that practice, because there were some, at least I received some serious concerns and complaints, I guess I would say, over that, of how frightened their children were, how frightened that even the parents were at that point. So I would just recommend, if I could, to tread cautiously along those lines, because it wasn't very well, for those who were woken up by it, it was not welcomed at all.
Yeah. And that's why I want to make sure I mentioned that tonight, and we are taking consideration of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on that Alderman Brand comment, maybe as a suggestion, you can just let the Elmhurst Police Department know that you're going to be working in the area after hours, and because if they get a call, they can at least say, "Oh, ma'am, it's just ComEd."
Okay, we can do that. And the only time we really do it is if there is an outage that we're there to take care of.
Of course.
And then all of a sudden, we see a work ticket next door, and they go in and do something minor. Oops. But
looking at-
that's a great suggestion to
Thank you.
contact the police department.
Problem
Or possibly the alderman in that area also. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we've definitely seen an improvement since 2010, almost fourfold, and certainly appreciate that. And I want to thank you for coming, and I'm already going to extend an invitation when your 2015 work order is finalized, with all of the additions that aren't on here yet. I'd like to invite you to come back and let everyone know when those plans are finalized.
We'll be happy to. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Are we going to roll those up or leave them down? Okay, on to agenda item number 3. Receipt of written communications from the public. At this time, is there anybody in the audience who has any written communication they wish to submit to staff? Please raise your hand. Mr. McLeister, you have something to submit? Got it. Okay. Anyone else have any written communication they'd like to submit? Seeing none, we'll go on to agenda item 4, public forum. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the council on any item they so choose. Out of respect for other folks who may want to speak and the work that we have to do here this evening, we ask that you keep your comment to 3 minutes. Should you run over 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up your comments. When you get to the microphone, we ask that you identify yourself, It's optional. If you so choose and wish to include your address, you're more than welcome to do so. That having been said, Clerk Spencer, is anybody at this time who has signed up for public forum?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have one person that signed up tonight, and that's Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Okay, Mr. Pagash, if you'd approach the microphone.
Claude Pagach, 566 West Gladys. Happy New Year. Ended last year rather interesting. Got a bid for retention on the parking garage. Wasn't part of the original foundation bid. It was going to be poured concrete. It's rather unusual, isn't it? Had an engineer redesign the whole foundation, and he would forget water retention. I don't think so. It was on the original drawing because the precast guy was going to supply it. We saved money, supposedly. Well, the interesting thing is we have a project manager, and having worked with project managers, when they open their eyes in the morning, you start paying them. So all these changes in foundation, shallow foundation, design of retention, poured in place. Did we save any money? Structural engineers don't work for nothing. And our project manager isn't working for nothing. So just what did we save? And it's just a little hard to believe it wasn't on original drawings, because when the foundation was bid, it came in budget. But then, geez, we forgot that water retention. We got to talk to that structural engineer. Sloppy. And then we had this Wilder Park, another project. Bought the property, had a building design, didn't design it to code. Went to committees, everybody nodded their head, wonderful, the guys are great. They also need a little money. I can't understand why this town has developers that never have money. Didn't have money for the parking garage, don't have money for Wilder Park, and Han's coming along. If the city is willing to do what it's done for these two individual simple projects, I hate to see what you guys are going to be willing to sell out this town on this Han.
Mr. Pagash, if you could wrap it up?
Sure, a couple of aldermen have already asked to debate Han as a council, not as a committee. That was rejected by the mayor. Why?
That's it.
That's it for people who have signed up at this time. Is there anybody in the audience who did not have an opportunity to sign up for our sign-in sheet? Please raise your hand. Seeing one. Ms. Brenner, I think you know the routine.
Tamara Brenner. So tonight, you're going to be approving yet another zoning project that's been passed through multiple levels without deliberation. I went to the zoning commission hearing, and I went to the DPZ committee, and I didn't hear deliberation at either one of those locations. The motto for zoning in the town seems to be, don't bother me with any facts because we've already made up our minds. The great minds, the great thinkers of Elmhurst have declared basically that the comprehensive plan and the downtown plan and the zoning code are all, they don't agree with one another, and they're missing the point of what we should be doing with the downtown. We should be building it up to multiple stories. We should be building up to greater density. Those things are not contained in the comprehensive plan, the downtown plan, or the zoning code. The comprehensive plan actually accommodates buildings that are already here. There are a small number of taller buildings, and the comprehensive plan acknowledges that. The comprehensive plan and the downtown plan, those do not envision 6-story buildings throughout the downtown. But you guys have established a new normal through the back door, And now you're going to perpetuate that later this year because we're going to plan to modify the zoning code and the comprehensive plan. We approved money in the budget to do that. The horse is already out of the barn, and now we're going to change the rules to make it retroactively okay. Oh, by the way, the zoning commission reports, and reports out of the DPZ as well, and some of the application statements simply restate the language in the zoning ordinance as it relates to conditional uses and variations. There are not substantive facts provided to support the conclusion that each criteria is met. We simply read a restatement of the criteria with the conclusion that the project meets this standard. That uses a lot of words, but it doesn't say anything. And that's the case on multiple zoning commission reports, and the DPZ is following suit. Really, how this should have gone, if we wanted to change how the downtown was going to be structured, we should have, and the zoning commission could have taken the lead in this, I believe. We should have changed the ordinances to reflect that reality if the public approved of it through the proper public process, public hearings before approving these projects. Obviously, it's a little late now. You guys have done it backwards, and that's how it's going to be. So my question to the council for now is, given that we're starting a new year, which ordinances are you going to be running roughshod over this year? Zoning ordinances completely flattened, and I'm just wondering which things it's going to be next. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else who wishes to address the council at this time, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements. Any announcements from the dais? Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. Tomorrow night, January 6th at 7 p.m., Cool Cities Coalition will be hosting a program, Making Sense of Home Energy Efficiency, which will be presented by Citizens Utility Board and Elevate Energy. This is not a library-sponsored event. Thanks.
Okay, any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Agenda item 6. At this time, is there any item on the consent agenda any alderman wishes to have pulled to either vote no or for further comment? Alderman Gutenkopf.
6.9, please.
6.9. Anyone else? Alderman Bram.
6.4.
Okay. Anything else? Seeing none, I will ask for an approval of the consent agenda, minus items 6.4 and 6.9. Motion to approve consent agenda minus those items. Motion by Alderman Dunn, second by Alderman Deuter. Clerk Spencer.
Dunn.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palomsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
York. Absent. Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays. Consent agenda is approved minus items 6.4 and 6.9. On to first pulled item, 6.4. This is my recommendation to council for adding someone to the EDC. To put this before the council, I will ask for a motion to approve. Let's see, I guess, Clerk Spencer, why don't you read the entire length of the letter?
With your advice and consent, I will appoint Mark Engelwitz to the Economic Development Commission for a term to expire April 30th, 2018.
Perfect. I'll ask for a motion to approve as read. A motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Mulliner. This is my recommendation. Alderman Bram, you pulled this. Do you have a question?
Yes, sir. I have no issue with the actual appointment of Mr. Engelwitz. I think he's a very qualified candidate, but I did have a couple of residents question, excuse me, question me, and I wasn't sure if this was done. When was the opening announced, and what was, Mayor, your due diligence to screen qualified candidates for this opening? So if you would like to speak with that, that's the only question that I have at this time for this appointment.
Well, as you're aware, Alderman Bram, I had to fill Alderman Hipkins' spot, and did a opening roll call, if you will, for that spot for the 4th Ward. And on the agenda, or on the application, and as part of the interview for everyone that I discussed, met with, I asked if they would be interested in serving on any boards. And Mr. Engelwitz did happen to mention that should he not be chosen for 4th Ward, he'd be interested in being on something else. And it just so happened within, I would say, about a month of me interviewing Mr. Engelwitz, a spot on the EDC opened up, so I offered it to him and had a good conversation. And he actually met with the chairman as well. So we thought it was a good fit, and that's why he's here.
I would agree. I mean, definitely from a resume perspective, he's definitely a great fit, and I wholeheartedly agree with your appointment. I guess the root of the questions that I received is more from a standpoint of, on some of these positions, like the EDC, the Economic Development Commission, do we have any pending applications of interest of residents out there? Because I think there is some interest out there, and I was wondering if there's still pending applications, and if not, when someone comes to me, I can let them know to feel free to apply.
We keep a file of folks who are interested in, sometimes we'll get just generic applications. I'd like to pitch in the city any way I can. If there's any boards or commissions, I'd like to be considered. So we do have an active file of that, but I'd be more than happy to talk to whoever called you and have a conversation with them.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Clerk Spencer?
Levin.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
York, absent. Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays. Motion passes. Mr. Engelwitz is appointed to the EDC. On to agenda item 6.9. This is an ordinance, I think ultimately, originally, as a result of an approved report out of DP&Z. I'd ask Clerk Spencer to read the ordinance.
An ordinance granting conditional use permit, associated variations for the redevelopment of the property commonly known as 195 through 197 Addison Avenue, Elmhurst, Illinois. Read the PIN number. Do you want me to
No,
read
that's
the PIN
fine.
number?
I think we know what we're talking about here.
Okay.
Very good. To put this ordinance before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve as read. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Palumski. Alderman Gutenkopf, I believe you pulled this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe I made my views on this project well-known up until this point. I wanted to pull it. I don't need to rehash all that.
Okay. Any other comments before we vote? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. I won't go into detail either from
Okay.
our last discussion, but please don't cut me off. But I just want to remind everyone that with these variances, with these conditional uses that are being requested, and I guess I'll make the assumption that we'll be moving forward with tonight, comes great economic profitability as well. The discussion of TIF incentives on this very property, very project, is also pending. So when we get to that, I want to just make sure that it's known, and I'm highlighting it here, that these variances, having this large of a development on this plot of land, does provide additional economic benefits. Thank you.
Any other comments? Clerk Spencer?
Levin.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Bram.
No.
Toledo.
Aye.
York, absent. Where am I? Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
No.
Deuter.
No.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Okay. 10 ayes, 3 nays, and 1 absent.
10 ayes, 3 nays, motion passes. Ordinance, agenda item 6.9, ordinance 012015 passes. On to reports and recommendations of appointed elected officials. Mayor Morley, I've got a couple of announcements. I will be giving the State of the City address. Let me get my calendar up here. Can't miss this. I will be giving my State of the City address that is sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce and hosted by Community Bank of Elmhurst next Tuesday at the Community Bank of Elmhurst at 7:30 in the morning. And that will be available shortly thereafter on the Chamber website and on YouTube. That's next Tuesday, the 13th. Regular City Council meeting 2 weeks from today, the 19th, is not actually 2 weeks from today because of MLK Day. It is the 20th. So a reminder to all elected officials and residents who wish to attend. That's the Mike Regan rule, we call it. We will be having our regularly scheduled meeting on January 20th. And then the last announcement I have is next Thursday the 15th. Next Thursday the 15th, Jefferson Cub Scout Pack at Jefferson Grade School, Pack 15, has asked me to host a Pinewood 101. Every year I teach a Pinewood class for Cub Scouts in town, and the Jefferson Cub Scout Pack 15 asked that I make an open invitation to all Cub Scouts who have pending Pinewood derbies. There will be a Pinewood 101 class next Thursday the 15th at Jefferson School at 7 p.m. That's it for me. City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you. I have two items. They both relate to stormwater. You may have noticed that we did pull a resolution from tonight's agenda, and that was for an agreement with the county for use of the quarry. The reason we pulled that, we put that on, that made it to the agenda prematurely. We still have one discussion point with the county, and it's moving forward, but the Stormwater Committee of the county is meeting tomorrow morning to discuss it. We anticipate that they will support that and move it forward to the county board agenda. We will send it to the Public Works Committee for next Monday evening and hope that we get it back on the agenda shortly thereafter. So just so everyone understands why we pulled that tonight. The second item is we are continuing to work with Burke on gathering information for the Park District. If you recall, a couple weeks ago, we reported that we're going back to the Park District with additional information regarding the York Commons project. So we anticipate getting the Park District that information this week in hopes that they get it on their next agenda as well. That's all.
Okay. Thank you. Any other reports or recommendations? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few, if I may request. I'll just rattle through all of them. Towards the end of last year, it was stated that the hope was to have the Hahn Street Development RDA into committee before the end of 2014. I was hoping to get a status if that would be happening in January of 2015. Second, when our communications coordinator, Dan Leahy, was hired, we talked about a short-term communication plan being developed. Was hoping to get a status on where that is at. Third, and probably my favorite, the Paragon development, if there's any latest and greatest news on when we're moving forward with that development, LA Fitness or otherwise. And then fourth is kind of tied to two of these, economic development overall. And there's been discussion, or in the papers actually, about Plas building, the former Plas building being sold. And I haven't seen, maybe I haven't seen the latest copy, but has something been presented to the city in regards to redevelopment of that property? And there's been some other hearsay on the streets about other properties up and down that side of York, but I guess primarily my question would be for that property today.
Whichever ones you don't want to, I'll handle.
Hahn Street, we're hoping to have a final meeting with developers this week to get something presented to committee still this month. And Plas, I know that the official ownership has changed hands, but nothing official has been submitted to the city. Mr. Grabowski, I'll leave you with short-term communication plan and Paragon.
Thank you. Regarding the short-term communication plan, Mr. Leahy has gone through a couple of drafts of the plan, working with Assistant Manager Kopp and myself. So we are finalizing that so that we can present it and roll it out shortly. Regarding Paragon, we had some discussions with the owners. They cleaned up the property significantly. They're aware of our property maintenance code, and they will continue to do that. And my understanding is they continue their negotiation with the tenant.
So both of those being Paragon and the communication plan, we have no set time frame on either of those as we speak tonight?
I don't have one for tonight on either one, as far as when it'll be finalized and presented, no.
Thanks.
Any other reports or recommendations? Seeing none, we'll move on to other business. Other business, Alderman Mulliner.
In light of the situations with the police officers across the country, especially those in New York who have lost their lives, I would request that we put forth, have a mayor put forth a resolution or a recommendation to do recommend that we do a Blue Ribbon Week honoring our police officers in the city of Elmhurst. Spring Road has kind of begun this process by putting up blue ribbons to honor the police officers because there was a blue light weekend that was just this past weekend, and I would request that the city of Elmhurst support our police officers by putting that forth as a recommendation.
Okay, we're looking to see what we can do. Any other business? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman Deuter, second by Alderman Mulliner. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.